Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining. Today in this session on global issues, we'll speak on Rohingya genocide in Burma. First, I would like to begin with the basic questions of what is Rohingya crisis, what is Rohingya genocide, why is this happening, reasons behind this, and how the acts of crimes of genocide is committed by the government of Burma, the country also known as Myanmar. So first question is, what is it? It is a highly sophisticated, systemic, and systematic scheme to eliminate an indigenous population of Arakan from their homeland. Why is Burma doing this to its own ethnic minority group? It is due to the rapidly growing Burmese extremist ideology of purity and superiority of race and religion in Burma. How they are doing this to Rohingya people? They are doing it through violations and violence by the Burmese military and the police force through all possible means, calculated to destroy the population. Yes, they have destroyed pretty much everything which is Rohingya. Just recently, even a few days back, there have been killing of Rohingya civilians in Sitwe by Burmese police, and there are instances in other townships. Nothing has changed on the ground, restrictions after restrictions. Very recently, the government has again rejected Rohingyas' application for contesting in the election. These are registered political parties, legitimate candidates. Their voting rights date back to 1947, and they have voted and contested in national elections ever since. Even in the Burmese military's 2010 election, the military has confiscated Rohingyas' NRC, national registration cards, and the white cards that were used for voting in the national elections. Now they are forcing Rohingya the NVC card. This NVC clearly voids the bona fide citizenship of Rohingya that they held. Here's the thing, if the application is denied, the person will end up in internment camps. If it is approved, the verification application is approved, the person is naturalized. They also call it Naingantha Pyu in Burmese language. But they are not giving Rohingya their bona fide citizenship. And once a person is naturalized, Rohingya, that person can be paralyzed, as his or her rights will be limited. It is basically a system of slavery that they are framing for Rohingya, basically saying that, okay, you can live here like a slave. This is the trap. This is a serious issue that defines the future of Rohingya in their homeland of Arakan. Speaking about population removal, over 1.5 million Rohingya have been forced out to Bangladesh, let alone those forced out to other countries in the region. The government of Burma has blocked the process of the very repatriation agreement that they signed with Bangladesh. They're blocking the process through various means. They are crossing out family members' names from the list of the potential returnees submitted by the government of Bangladesh. They are inside Arakan, they are building camps, internment camps for the returnees, where they are probably going to languish for decades. Once they enter those camps, they are not likely going to get out from there. It can drag on for years and years. The refugees know it. There's nothing there on the ground that is conducive condition for the repatriation. During the military assault, the notoriously known as clearance operation, a great number of Rohingya families did not flee to Bangladesh, and they took shelter in nearby villages. Now, the government of Burma is blocking them from returning to their original homes in their villages. Government officials are telling them to build and live in some isolated places like marshlands, salty marshlands. This is a Rohingya people. This is an agrarian society which lives on farming, fishing, cutting woods and other things. How they are going to do that on this isolated location and salty marshlands? This is precisely why the military has burned the homes to the ground. Just removing their population and even targeting their livelihoods. Acts of genocide, one after another. The violations, I'll highlight some here. Revocation of citizenship, that has the major impact on Rohingya people. That is restrictions of movements, deprivation of freedom of worship, deprivation of education, restriction on marriages and childbirth, confiscation of lands and properties, building settlements to drastically alter the demographic distribution of the population with intent to destroy, deprivation of food and life-sustaining needs, arbitrary arrest and lengthy prison terms, some up to 40 years, to the very innocent people, police involvement in human trafficking, targeting children. These acts clearly violates Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, then the violence that constitute crimes of genocide. Military assault on Rohingya civilian population. There were at least 20 attacks on Rohingya during the past few decades. And among them, there are 3 major attacks that drove out over 1.5 million altogether. Just in August 2017, over 750,000 Rohingya forced out to Bangladesh. What did they actually do during the attacks on the civilian population? Complete destruction of villages, even not keeping any traces of their inhabitancy in those villages. Mass killing, mutilation, dismemberment. Shooting at men, women and children, fleeing the burning homes. They are fleeing for their lives. They are shooting at them. Police brutality and torture. Organizing, arming, directing militia groups and mobs to kill Rohingya and destroy their properties. That's enough background, I think, for now. Now let's look at the international jurisprudence. We are seeking justice for Rohingya people. Burma is a signatory to 1948 Genocide Convention. Burma has clearly violated Article 2, Article 3, and others. We have seen all this happening in Rohingya in Arakan state. Seeking justice, how did we arrive to this point at the ICJ? The World Court, of course, the OIC, a bloc of 57 countries. OIC has taken 3-step approach to address the plight of Rohingya. First, political advocacy at the United Nations and other world powers, and then humanitarian assistance to refugee camps in Bangladesh as well as IDP camps in Arakan. OIC member countries did that a lot. The legal case number 3, which is now at the ICJ. Actually, for quite some time, we have been brainstorming the legal issue in the framework of international jurisprudence at the OIC headquarters in Jeddah and in several OIC country group meetings. Then the process in OIC officially began in 2018 during the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers conference in Dhaka and the OIC Foreign Ministers visiting refugee camps in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. We, with the OIC, rallied for over 2 years for the legal solution to be added to the repertoire of the OIC actions in support of the Rohingya people. Of course, when it comes to legal aspect, there has to be a serious investigation to which legal approach will be the most suitable and most sustainable. We have brainstormed for quite some time about which route to take, where to do that, which international legal body we should go to. Initially, there were some disagreements about ICC, the International Criminal Court, because many countries within OIC and even EU, European Union, are not party to the Roma Statute. So ICC did not seem to be appropriate. And there was ICJ, the World Court, which has symbolic as well as legal importance to this. So OIC worked hard to get all the 57 member countries to approve it. And this effort was led by Gambia, which was appointed as chair of the ad hoc committee and co-chaired by Bangladesh. Alhamdulillah, we have first landmark decision for Rohingya people came from ICJ on January 23rd, 2020, where ICJ issued the fantastic verdict on provisional measures with 4 specific orders to Myanmar for compliance and measures to be taken on the ground to protect Rohingya people from genocidal acts and crimes. Actually, the Gambia's application contained over 110 instances of acts and crimes of genocide committed by against Rohingya by the government of Burma. 6 provisional measures are requested by the Gambia, and the court has granted 4 measures with unanimous decision. It is very noteworthy that the ad hoc judge appointed by Myanmar was part of the unanimous vote, basically agreeing that genocidal crimes are taking place in Rakhine State against Rohingya that must be stopped and further prevented. Now the current status. Yes, there was a change on Gambia side with the new minister coming in. Actually, Minister Tambadou has been truly a great champion of Rohingya cause, this cause. And inshallah, our new minister, Dora Jallow, taking this portfolio will continue the same way. Our legal team in Washington has already been established, and now our new minister will be working with them. Gambia is fighting for an ethnic minority group in Burma, which is thousands of miles away from Gambia. This is a result of the international coalition. First, the UN fact-finding mission submitting the report, and the ICJ accepting it. Yes, coalition is getting bigger now. Maldives has joined the Gambia, and many countries in the OIC, Europe, and North America are pouring in with various forms of support. Another good example is the ICC, which is inspired by the ICJ case. And ICC is reopening its investigation. Now, what's next? The court has given a clear path forward. In this current process, one thing we, the Arkan Rohingya Union, the organization formed by the OIC, as the official representative organization of Rohingya people, we are making sure that we regularly provide reports to OIC on the current situation on the ground in Arkan and whether there are violations on the ground by Burma or any positive development in line with the ICJ verdict on the provisional measures. The Arkan Rohingya Union regular report to OIC is instrumental in advancing the case with the important information as our report goes not just to OIC and its member states, but also to many other countries. There's a great coalition building effort. So now, what the international community can do in this? Very important thing is, among other things, sustain the momentum. And we need the international coalition building coming strongly to sustain the momentum. Reaching out to your elected officials for extended support for the ICJ ruling. Reaching out to local and international media to continuously provide coverage. Sustain the humanitarian relief aid. There are dire situations in some locations. more sanctions has to be in place. More sanctions on Myanmar has to be in place. We must have more resolutions in the US Congress, OIC, European Union, and UN. So these actions by the international community must be sustained. These efforts must be sustained for further coalition building. That's very important. Then we can go forward and eventually win in the ICJ case that it is a genocide. What is happening to Rohingya in Burma is a genocide. Now, I'll present our attorney, Arsalan Suleiman. Mr. Suleiman has a long career in US government in various positions, including the Special Envoy to OIC. Mr. Suleiman has been the central figure in this ICJ case and instrumental with tremendous efforts and talents. In his presentation, he will cover the legal aspects of the ICJ case on Rohingya genocide. Here is Mr. Arsalan Suleiman.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Waqaruddin, for that very kind introduction, and thank you to ISNA and all of the organizers for the tremendous effort you've put into making this virtual convention a success, inshallah. As Dr. Waqaruddin mentioned, my name is Arsalan Suleiman, and I work for the law firm Foley Hoag LLP. We represent the Republic of the Gambia in its lawsuit against Myanmar for the genocide of the Rohingya community of Myanmar. By way of background, I'll just mention that in addition to being a practicing lawyer, I also worked at the U.S. Department of State for a little under 7 years during the Obama administration from 2010 to 2017. I held a few different roles while I was at the State Department, including serving as the Deputy U.S. Special Envoy to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. And then in the last 2 years of the administration, I was serving as the Acting U.S. Special Envoy to the OIC. And for 4 years, I also worked with the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor as their counselor for multilateral affairs, where I focused in particular on U.S. human rights policy in the United Nations and other multilateral organizations. This presentation will be focusing on some of the legal elements of the efforts to promote justice and accountability for the crimes committed against the Rohingya. In November of 2019, the Gambia filed a application or a lawsuit against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And the Gambia was able to do so because both the Gambia and Myanmar are parties to an international treaty called the Genocide Convention of 1948. And the Genocide Convention was the world's first multilateral human rights treaty. And what that treaty does is it defines the crime of genocide. It declares the crime of genocide to be a crime prohibited under international law. And it imposes obligations on all of the states that are party to that treaty. And those obligations are to punish genocide when it occurs, to prevent genocide from occurring. And the International Court of Justice has also interpreted the convention to imposing the obligation not to commit genocide. So all three of those obligations are obligations that are binding on all states that are party to that treaty. And there is another provision of that treaty which is particularly important. It's essentially the dispute resolution clause of the treaty, Article 9. And what Article 9 provides is that if there are any state parties that have a dispute, a difference of opinion as to the interpretation or application of the convention, they can bring that dispute to the International Court of Justice for adjudication. And that is exactly what the Gambia has done. Even though the Gambia is thousands of miles away, it still has the sovereign right, like any other member, like any other state party to the Genocide Convention, to hold other state parties accountable to their obligations under the convention. And that is exactly what the Gambia has sought to do. in November of 2019, the Gambia filed its application or its complaint against Myanmar at the ICJ. And in its complaint, it specified all of the reasons why Myanmar has violated its obligations under the convention, namely by committing genocide against the Rohingya, but also by failing to prevent genocide against the Rohingya and failing to punish the crime of genocide after it had occurred against members of the Rohingya community. As part of that filing in November, the Gambia also requested that the court consider on an urgent basis what are called provisional measures. Provisional measures are similar to a temporary restraining order or interim relief that the court can grant and would become binding on the parties. And that interim relief is meant to preserve the rights of the parties and to prevent further harm from occurring while the court is considering the case in its entirety, meaning the case on the merits itself. And so the Gambia requested in November of 2019 that the court issue certain provisional measures in order to prevent genocide from continuing to occur against the Rohingya. Because, of course, the main acts of violence that occurred against the Rohingya occurred in 2017 and 2018 during so-called clearance operations, in which the Myanmar armed forces directly attacked the civilian population of Myanmar's Rakhine state, where the Rohingya are the majority population there. And what the military did was they engaged in a brutal and horrific campaign of violence against the Rohingya, where they targeted people, innocent women, children, and elderly for killing. They burned down villages. They killed children. They threw women and children in burning structures, and committed really gruesome acts of violence, including mass rape. And all of these horrific atrocities have been documented in various ways in human rights reports, through the really courageous and brave testimony of the Rohingya survivors, as well as through a United Nations sponsored investigation. The United Nations Human Rights Council created by resolution a fact-finding mission, which was dispatched in order to ascertain the facts of what was going on in terms of human rights violations and conditions in Myanmar. And that fact-finding mission published in 2018 and 2019 authoritative reports about what had gone on in Myanmar during those clearance operations that were targeting the Rohingya. And that fact-finding mission, which was composed of three very well-regarded and respected international experts, that fact-finding mission concluded that what had happened there was genocide, that there was evidence of genocidal intent by the Myanmar armed forces in their activities and actions against the Rohingya. And so the Gambia filed its case, and it also asked the court to provide provisional measures in order to protect the Rohingya who remain in Myanmar. There are still in Rakhine State, in the western state of Myanmar, hundreds of thousands of Rohingya who remain there and who remain vulnerable to ongoing acts of genocide. Because the system of oppression, that targets the Rohingya, that discriminates against the Rohingya from day one, from the day that they are born, that entire infrastructure and system still remains in place. And so the Gambia argued to the court that some measures need to be imposed by the court in order to protect the Rohingya while the case continues against Myanmar at the ICJ. And a hearing was held in December in order for the Gambia to present its case. And Myanmar showed up and came to court in order to defend itself. In fact, Myanmar's de facto head of state, Aung San Suu Kyi, came to court to defend herself and her country. And the court considered the Gambia's requests, and in January 23rd of this year, 2020, the court, by a unanimous decision, 17-0, held in favor of the Gambia and found that The Rohingya did indeed, on a prima facie basis, constitute a group that was protected under the convention, and therefore their rights deserve to be protected on this interim basis. And the court ordered Myanmar to not commit genocide, to take action to affirmatively prevent genocide. The court also ordered Myanmar to preserve evidence of the crime of genocide, and it ordered Myanmar to report back to the court on its implementation of these provisional measures in order for the court to have an ongoing monitoring of the situation to ensure that genocide does not continue against the Rohingya. Now, that obviously was a very important decision. It was a very strong decision by the court, and it was a decision that recognized the dire situation of the Rohingya who remain. And that situation, as Dr. Waqaruddin explained, has only gotten worse due to COVID-19 and other factors. As far as the case at the ICJ is concerned, the Gambia continues to work very diligently in order to amass evidence and present its full case to the court. On October 23rd, the Gambia will be filing its main substantive brief in the case called a memorial. And in the memorial, the Gambia's full case will be presented to the court in order to fully state the case for why Myanmar has violated the Genocide Convention in its treatment of the Rohingya. Myanmar will have the opportunity to file within a period of 9 months after that what is called its counter memorial, so its brief in response. And then the court will decide if further briefing is needed. There might be an additional round of briefing in which the parties are allowed to respond to the arguments that each other had made in their prior filings. And then ultimately the court will hold a hearing, a public hearing on the merits of the dispute. And after that hearing, the court will then adjourn in order to consider and make a decision on the Gambia's claims against Myanmar for violations of the Genocide Convention. And there's also an effort by the victims to encourage and secure a ongoing investigation at the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court has opened an investigation regarding crimes that may have been committed partially in Myanmar, but that ultimately were completed on the territory of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a state party to the ICC, and therefore, if a crime was committed in part on the territory of Bangladesh, then the ICC would potentially have jurisdiction over that crime. And that is the theory of jurisdiction that the ICC prosecutor has pursued thus far, and that the ICC continues to investigate on that basis. The main crime that they have been looking at is the crime of forced deportation. So the challenge with the ICC and any other criminal justice mechanism is that you have to have a criminal defendant in custody. And there's no guarantee that there will that an opportunity will come up in which one of the perpetrators of the genocide might come into the custody of the ICC. So until that happens, there may not be any case that can actually be brought at the ICC. It may only exist as an investigation and not as an actual prosecution, which is why the Gambia's case against the ICJ has been so important in order to allow for the first full international accountability mechanism and case to proceed in order to address the genocide against the Rohingya. I'll stop there because I know that Dr. Waqaruddin also has a lot of information to share, and we have a strict time limit. So I hope that this presentation was helpful, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saeed Dura. I am so happy to be a part of this 57th annual ISNA convention. I know it's very difficult this year given the virtual side of things, especially since every year ISNA is a special place to be, see old friends, hear amazing talks and speeches, and connect with people. It's an amazing time, and even walking around the bazaar is a great fun time. But kudos to the ISNA team, including the volunteers, the supporters, the donors, and all of you who are watching these videos for making this a virtual convention. Applause all around for all of you. May Allah reward you all for this deed and for all of your hard work. Ameen. Today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about a cause that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the people of Palestine. Of course, in Palestine, many of us know there is an occupation there that is very much restricting a lot of the different resources that are available to the people of Palestine. But today I'm looking at it from a different lens. I'm actually looking at it from the humanitarian lens. So we're going to look at social justice through that humanitarian lens and how we can help the people of Palestine. In the humanitarian world, we have to concentrate on that humanitarian lens, as I mentioned, because it's very easy sometimes to get caught up in the politics and things like that. But there are so many NGOs out there that are doing amazing work in that regard. So everybody has their specialty. I work with Islamic Relief USA, and our specialty is relief and development. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you can do something and how you can activate, maybe even using skills you didn't know you had, to help the people of Palestine. The first thing that's really important for us to understand is why we even talk about, Palestine. A lot of people know that, the third holiest site in Islam is Al-Aqsa. That's near and dear, in Jerusalem. It's near and dear to all of us. But also, let's face it, one of the constant, ideas that run through my head all the time is, if I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which I do, and I love the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then why don't I love the people of Palestine? I should be loving Palestine. I should be loving the people of Syria, loving the people of Yemen, and loving the people of Pakistan, and loving all the creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, today I'm going to talk a little bit about Palestine. I hope by the end of this short talk, you have an idea what is a little bit of the humanitarian need in Palestine, how to identify, possible solutions. So what solutions would be, needed in that area, and then how to activate yourself. How do you support those organizations, or how do you, go and help? Now, this is not going to be a fundraiser, so don't worry. But let's face it. One of the benefits of fundraising, dinners, events, webinars, are because they educate you and they give you some insight. And that's actually step one that I really wanted to discuss today. I wanted to discuss educating yourself, on what is happening, what is the need, and so forth, especially when it comes to the humanitarian lens. I know I've heard this proverb, they tried to bury us, but they did not know we were seeds. In a lot of ways, as a Palestinian, I love that proverb, because I think about no matter what happens to the people of Palestine, no matter what you do to hold them down, they still grow, they still flourish, right? So from a humanitarian perspective, that's actually what we're here to do. We're not necessarily here to talk politics. We concentrate on the humanitarian side of things. And what that means is we're here actually trying to water that seed. We're trying to provide water for that seed. We're trying to provide sunlight for that seed, because we know if that seed has the opportunity to grow, it's going to grow into something beautiful, right? It's going to grow into something with amazing branches, with amazing leaves, and if it's in Palestine, with amazing olives. So that's what we're here to do from a humanitarian perspective. We do our best. At the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to judge us on what the result of that seed growing necessarily is. It's going to judge on what did you do within your capacity. If you even had a cup of water, how did you use it? Did you drink it, or did you pour it onto a plant that looked like it needed water? So these are the things that we have to keep in mind when it comes to Palestine. We do our best, we keep our intentions pure, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us. Ameen. So with that being said, I want to start a little bit about, how does social justice necessarily connect into this idea of watering the seed, or into the humanitarian perspective when it comes to Palestine. Well, if you actually look at social justice, for example, there's many different definitions of it, right? But I want to concentrate on a few points within the definition of social justice, and that is the side of equality, dignity, and opportunity. Now, you hear a lot now, especially supporting our Black brothers and sisters all over the United States, and their voices will inshallah be heard, and everyone will be able to adjust, how a lot of things have been happening in this country, so that way we can support this movement, because it is important that everybody has equality, dignity, and opportunity. But some of the things that you hear when you hear about this movement is you hear about things like access to resources, or a breakdown in the systems that give particular opportunities and resources to those individuals. And while the movement to support our Black brothers and sisters is a completely different movement, there's still parallels there, right? It at least gives us a baseline to start an understanding, to understand how we can support that movement, because we're all creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should have access to all of this opportunities and resources. So I'm breaking it down for you really in 3 steps, okay? And what are those 3 steps? The first thing is you need to educate yourself, okay? The second step is you need to seek solutions to support. And I'm saying it that way. I'm going to get to it in a little bit why I'm saying it that way. And then the third is to support, advocate, and maybe even activate yourself, right? So let's start off with educating yourself. Sometimes, especially in our communities, we'll share out WhatsApp. Did you hear Brother Saeed about this or that? I happened to see something on the news. What do you think? Educating yourself, sometimes you have to go a little bit deeper. As we always say, the first word spoken, ikra. Well, you need to read, right? So you need to have this understanding on what is happening on the ground in that situation as it relates to the humanitarian aspect. So let's get into that just a little bit. And again, I know I could talk for days about this, so I'm just going to give you a brief snapshot that is just really going to, just interest you a little bit, trying to get you kind of interested in going out on your own and looking deeper into this subject, inshallah. So I'm going to try to kind of touch on a few points. The first thing is, there's a lot of misconceptions about Gaza. You'll hear things like, there's so many people in Gaza, it's like a prison or whatever it might be, right? There's Gaza, there's West Bank. First of all, we're all kind of unified, right? We're all Palestine. But at the same time, we have to kind of take a look at it from almost 2 angles, right? You have places like Gaza, and Gaza, the amount of people in Gaza, I believe it's about a couple million people. But to put that in perspective, when you say a couple million, that might not sound like a lot because you get caught up in the numbers. But when you actually think about it, Gaza is about the same size as Rhode Island, but it has 4 times as many people as Rhode Island. So when you have a couple million people in such a small space, when it comes to even now with COVID and social distancing and access to resources, you have basically a lot of people, and there's a lot of people in that area. It's very densely populated. Even in the West Bank's a little bit larger, so it's going to be about the size of like Connecticut, but again, about 4 times as many people as Connecticut. So that makes it even harder because in places, for example, like Gaza, over 80% of the people that live in Gaza right now rely on humanitarian assistance. Okay. Here, when you file for unemployment, you might get certain, access to, financial assistance. You might get like, job help and things like that. It works a little bit different, in places like Gaza, for example. So all over Palestine, the unemployment rate is an even tougher thing that they have to deal with. because they don't have access to those resources. And to put even the unemployment rate so that everybody can understand the unemployment rate in Palestine. The unemployment rate in Palestine is just over 25%. Some people say even a little bit higher, maybe even a touch lower. But to put that in perspective, just so everybody can understand, in the United States, the highest level of unemployment that we've ever had during the late 20s and into the 30s in the United States was called the Great Depression. Now, think about that for a second. Our highest rate of unemployment was called the Great Depression. In U.S. history, it's known as the Great Depression, and everyone will forever know about it as, Great Depression. But in Palestine, annually is the Great Depression when it comes to unemployment rate. So there's even a lot of other similarities between the Great Depression, but that specifically makes it really difficult. There are a lot of people who will say for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, even to today, we're feeling the results of the Great Depression. Right? And anytime we feel that the economy is starting to struggle, everyone in the US typically panics because they say, oh no, I hope it's not another Great Depression, right? But in Palestine, this is an annual thing. The other thing that we lose sight of is a lot of people will say things like, again, this isn't why we have to have this need to educate ourselves. People will say things like, oh, the water quality is not great. Not great is one of the biggest understatements I've ever heard. People will say the water quality. I saw recently somebody was saying online, the water that the people of Gaza are drinking is dirty. Dirty even is an understatement to me, because if I were to take a cup of water right now and just sprinkle some dirt in it from my front yard, that's dirty. But that's not exactly what the water is like there. So to really put it in perspective, just understand that every day, because of the lack of infrastructure and because of the resources and because the chokehold that's on a lot of these people, especially in places like Gaza, you have to understand that these individuals literally are watching sewage drain into the sea, into their water supply. I'm literally saying raw sewage is dumping into their water supply. Now, am I saying it's a drop a day? No. Actually, statistics will show you that it's actually closer to 30 million gallons of raw sewage, not a year, a day. 30 million gallons of raw sewage a day dumping straight into that Mediterranean Sea in the areas that surround Gaza. That's where that water is coming from. That's the water that they're using. Even their filtration systems and everything are not at a point where they need to be, and that's 30 million gallons of that water. Now, if of that sewage, I should say. Now, if you want to put that in perspective, to really think about 30 million gallons, what is that? Is that a swimming pool? No, of course not. Go to your bathroom, look at your bathtub, and imagine your bathtub being filled with that raw sewage 600,000 times a day. And that's what's being dumped into the supply. 600,000. It's so bad, and sometimes we lose a perspective on how bad it is. We say things like a true statistic, 97% of the water is not suitable for human consumption. That sounds very scientific and technical. Basically, the water nobody should drink the water. The water should not be used by human beings, not human consumption, not potable, although it's bad water. It is disease-filled water. And again, this is what happens when you educate yourself, right? Let's look at this from our perspective here, living in the States. If you're from the States, this is what you're thinking. If you were to take the water now, the CDC measures things like nitrate, right? Nitrate maybe a little bit of nitrate can be good in your water, but once it hits a certain point, it becomes dangerous. It becomes something that's unhealthy. The amount of nitrate in the water in the United States, the moment they test it, if it tests that it has more than 10 milligrams, 10, in a liter of water, it's a problem. That is the maximum amount. They do not, they do not want to exceed that. Now, what's crazy about that is that in places like Gaza, it's not 10 milligrams, it's not 20, it's not 30, it's not 50 per liter, it's not even 100. It's 127 milligrams per liter. So more than 10 times the maximum amount we would ever allow in the water in the United States. So what does that do? What happens when the nitrate goes up, right? What happens when that amount is that high? Well, what they're finding is that the sisters are giving birth to blue babies in some places. Baby is blue. Blue is my shirt. Why? Because the nitrate is so high. It's even causing special birth defects. Now, I'm not talking about birth defects as we might think about it. Sometimes you'll hear about, cleft palate, things like that, which are horrible. But the birth defects that they're having now in places like within Palestine, we're talking about children being born with 3 arms, talking about being born with 1 ear, talking about, 3 legs. Recently, I heard a child who had half of their brain outside of their skull. So just because you don't hear the death toll rising every day in Palestine and you assume, not a lot of people died today, alhamdulillah. Yes, alhamdulillah, but at the same time, these people are being born with defects. You have entire families. I know personally a family that the entire family, I believe it was the mother, the daughter, the father, and the son, all died of cancer within a year's time, right? How does the whole family get cancer? From the water, So this is really important for us to kind of keep in mind. So when you start taking a look at the water, the need for food, we haven't even spoken about the need for food, right? When you have over 80% of the people needing humanitarian aid, when you have all of these things factored in, education, hospitals being without drugs, literally medications. Most hospitals have their 2 or 3 items that they must have in order to be functional. Half of those items on average in Palestine don't have. So imagine I have the antibiotic, but I don't have the painkiller. Imagine in some cases where they're asking individuals to go to the pharmacy, purchase the items, hoping that they have it, and bring it back to the hospital to be treated. Can you imagine? So what we try to do is we try to take a look at solution-based programs. That's step 2. We already know that there's a horrible situation that's happening in Palestine. We already know that there's a desperate need. So when you start to go and look for, a humanitarian organization or NGO, whatever it might be, you always want to take a look at what is it that this organization is doing? What is their specialty, or what is it that they're doing to provide a solution for these problems that I researched, that I've heard from friends and family about, that I've educated myself on? The first thing you want to try to take a look at is, what are they doing for literacy and education? What are they doing for schools? What are they doing to provide not just backpacks and things like that? Those are very important, but what are they doing to improve the knowledge? To make these youth and these individuals, take them to the next level, make them as smart as possible, make them go out there and achieve amazing things. Literacy and education is typically where it starts. Not only that, the schools are very much the meeting place for a lot of these kids and a lot of these families. Schools really are what are providing a lot of the resources, and that's where a lot of the work happens through these schools, including some of the feeding programs. The other thing is you want to take a look at is, are they doing anything to help for vulnerable children or children with special needs? It's the most overlooked, or really underserved, I should say, population in Palestine is the special needs. I met a sister once within the refugee camp. She was there and she had 5 kids, and she had to decide day by day who gets to use the wheelchair, or who gets to use the medication. You want to find organizations that are providing that, and you want to advocate about that. The other thing is vocational job training. The talent in Palestine is some of the highest talent I've ever seen. The problem is they just need an opportunity. They just need to be given the chance or the training, or somebody to come in and say, here, I'm just going to show you, what IT work is all about, or I'm going to show you how to use your hands. I'm going to show you how to start a bakery. I'm going to show you how to do finances and accounting for yourself to start a business. Whatever it might be. It could be even starting a cell phone stand, whatever it is. That training to help them get to that next level. The other thing is looking at programs for the arts. I recently saw the child who was rapping in Palestine, and it seems like it went viral. That's important because that allows those children to express themselves. I went and I taught workshops for children in Palestine, and so many of the stories that they tell end in tragedy. Everything they're talking about ends in tragedy. I tried to get them to kind of take a different perspective, look at it from a different perspective, and tried to kind of, make them feel a little bit better about their chances, because so many of them felt that, I'm going to be like this and my kids will be like this and there's not much we can do. So it's really important that you find an organization and you find a program that's offering maybe things within the arts that allows kids to maybe learn to paint. Maybe they want to be poets. Maybe they want to be writers. Maybe they want to sing nasheed. We don't know. Whatever it is, they just need an opportunity. And a lot of the big Palestinian celebrities and artists were given an opportunity, and now they're changing the world through their art. The other part of it too is even sports. I've seen many soccer players even in Palestine. They don't get to water the field as often. The field basically becomes almost like a sheet of concrete. So to find an organization that maybe is going in there, and whether it be building a playground, or whether it be building a soccer field, or whatever it might be, sports are a huge outlet. And also, sports could potentially provide them an opportunity to earn a lot of money and get some recognition and to change the life that their family has through the accolades they will gain through sports. The other couple parts is microfinance programs, one of my favorite. It basically provides an interest-free loan. I visited a sister in Palestine that was really in a bad situation. She literally was going through some issues with her family. She didn't know what she was going to do, and she was even actually attacked at one point and stabbed. She didn't know where to go. She said she sewed up her wound, and she didn't know what to do. And then she saw an Islamic Relief representative going through her village. She spoke to them. They were able to give her a loan to start some greenhouses. And fast forward, now she's almost like mayor of the village. She has several greenhouses. She started a salon for sisters there. She's able to provide food for a lot of the locals. So now she has taken her bad situation and suddenly we watered that seed, literally and figuratively in this case, and allowed that to grow. And now she's not only changed her life, but the life of her village through a $5,000 microfinance loan that she was able to repay in only 2 years. And then that money was able to go to a neighbor. So look into that, inshallah. And then finally, you have things like refugee programs, which are very important. 1 out of every 3 refugees in the world are Palestinian. So it's not just about within Palestine and refugees there, but even outside, into Lebanon, into even the US, into Jordan. Palestinians, refugee programs are very important to try to put them on that path to changing, their life for the better. And of course, psychosocial support, whether it be in adults, there are people there that are having strokes at age 30, heart attacks from all the stress. It's really important for us to take a look at that, and to try to help and provide. You can't do like we do here. You can't cover the eyes of your child if you feel something on TV is too violent. Over there, that's their life. You can't cover their eyes. So it's really important, especially, with COVID-19 and the way it is going, it's shrunk their ability to kind of go out and see things. And now it's just this constant repetition every day. So again, I want to summarize before I let you all go, just so you know what you can go do. First, I need you to be present. Don't just say, oh no, another fundraiser, what am I going to do? No, be present, listen, find out about Palestine, find out what you can do to help. Go to your online in-person, or in-person events. Listen into your webinars. Get that information, right? Don't just go and post something on social media. Tell your story. Learn about it and tell a story. Call your friends. Have personal conversations. Talk to them personally about things you want to know or things you found out. It will make a difference. And of course, use your tax dollars. People, they go and they use a gift card because it's going to run out and they're going to lose their gift card money or their coupon's going to expire. You're paying your tax dollars. Call your local Congress people. Call your local representatives. Tell them you want to talk about the humanitarian crisis in Palestine. And peaceful protests are another way. Go out and let your voice be heard and talk about this humanitarian crisis. So again, there's so much more you can do. I just want to thank all of you for listening into this conversation. And remember, go find your local organization. Donate, donate, donate. Help the people of Palestine. Thank you so much. Jazakum Allah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.